What if the way you're living assumes you have a spare life waiting somewhere in the future? One you'll begin when conditions improve, when energy is higher, when time finally opens up. What if every delay is built on the quiet belief that this moment is not the real one yet? You know the pattern, the goals that live comfortably in conversation but never reach your calendar. The plans that sound convincing in your head but dissolve when action is required. You'll start training next week. You'll work on that idea when things slow down. You'll fix your health when work is less stressful. You'll be present with the people you love when life feels more manageable. Maybe that person isn't someone you know. Maybe it's you. The strange part is that there's no confusion. You're not lost. You're not lacking direction. You already know what matters. You've thought it through. You've planned. You've written lists. You know exactly which actions would move your life forward. Study, train, build, speak, show up. Call the people you keep saying you'll call. But when the moment arrives, something subtle happens. You hesitate, you delay, you postpone. Tomorrow will be better. Monday will feel right. Next month, I'll be ready. Days pass, then weeks, then months, then years. And nothing changes except the weight of regret quietly accumulating in the background. Same dreams, same promises, same sense that life is happening somewhere else. In Japan, there is a concept called Ichigo Ichie. It translates roughly to one time, one meeting, but its meaning goes deeper. It points to a truth that is easy to hear and difficult to live. Every moment occurs once and once only. It will never repeat itself in the same form again. Tea masters used this idea to approach ceremonies with full attention. Even if the same people gathered in the same room the next day, the moment would not be the same. The air would be different. The mood would shift. Time would have moved. That exact encounter would be gone forever. Now, apply this idea beyond ceremony. The workout you skipped today cannot be recovered. The focused hour you delayed no longer exists. The conversation you shortened because you were distracted will never return in the same way. And yet your mind keeps telling you there is always another chance. Always another tomorrow. Modern neuroscience explains why this illusion feels so convincing. Each time you postpone something meaningful, your brain reinforces the habit of delay. You are not just avoiding action, you are training yourself to avoid it. The more often you choose comfort over commitment, the stronger that pattern becomes. Eventually, postponement stops feeling like a decision and starts feeling like who you are. This is the story of someone who lived inside that illusion for years, someone capable, intelligent, and fully aware of what he needed to do, yet unable to do it. Until a moment arrived that could not be postponed. A moment that forced him to see that later was never going to come. This is the story of Alex. And before it continues, take a second to pause. Think of the one thing you've been putting off for far too long, the thing you justify postponing even though you know exactly why it matters. Leave it in a comment, not as a promise, as an acknowledgement. Many people reading this are carrying the same weight, and recognition is often the first crack in the illusion. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. The life that was always about to start. Alex was 31 years old and permanently preparing to begin. From the outside, his life looked stable. He had a respectable job in operations for a mid-sized company. He paid his bills on time. He was reliable, polite, intelligent. People described him as someone with a lot of potential. Potential became the word that followed him everywhere. Alex didn't hate his job, but he didn't love it either. He treated it as temporary, a placeholder while he worked on something more meaningful. That something had changed forms over the years, but the pattern never did. At one point, it was a business idea, a platform he had mapped out in detail. He knew the problem it solved. He understood the market. He had notebooks filled with sketches and notes. But the actual execution never began because he wanted to wait until he had uninterrupted time to do it properly. Later, it became a creative goal. Writing. He told people he had stories in him that needed to be written. He read about craft, he watched interviews, he even bought software and set aside folders on his computer. But writing required sitting with discomfort, and there was always a reason not to start that day. His health followed the same script. He knew exactly what he needed to do: exercise regularly, eat better, sleep more consistently. He paid for memberships and programs he barely used. Each Monday was supposed to be different. Each Monday looked exactly like the last. Relationships suffered quietly. Alex wasn't absent, but he wasn't present either. Conversations happened alongside screens. Time together existed, but attention didn't. When people tried to talk about the future, he deflected gently. There was always time later to figure things out. The most painful part was that Alex knew all of this. He wasn't unaware. He wasn't ignorant. He could explain procrastination, motivation, and habit formation better than most people. He had consumed enough content to understand exactly why he was stuck, but understanding didn't translate into action. His days followed a predictable rhythm. Mornings started rushed. Evenings ended with the intention to just relax for a bit before doing something productive. That bit expanded. Hours disappeared. Nights ended with vague guilt and renewed promises. Tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow never was. Chapter 2. The Illusion of Unlimited Time. Alex believed he had time, not consciously. He wouldn't have said it out loud, but his behavior revealed the belief clearly. Every delay assumed future availability. Every postponed action assumed a version of himself that would be more disciplined, more motivated, more ready. This belief is subtle, and it's one of the most dangerous ideas a human mind can carry. Because time does not behave the way your intentions assume it does. Time doesn't wait for clarity. It doesn't pause for confidence. It doesn't slow down because you're overwhelmed. Each moment arrives once, then disappears. Alex's life wasn't falling apart dramatically. That's what made it dangerous. It was eroding quietly. No crisis, no collapse, just slow drift. One evening, while scrolling aimlessly, he came across a photo of himself from several years earlier. He looked healthier, more alert, less tired. He tried to remember what he had been waiting for back then. He couldn't. That realization lingered longer than usual. What if the life he was preparing for was already passing? Chapter 3. When awareness arrives without permission. The moment that changed things didn't feel important at first. It wasn't dramatic. No argument, no loss, no sudden revelation. It was a phone call Alex almost ignored. Someone close to him had experienced a health scare. Nothing fatal, nothing final, but enough to shake the assumption that there would always be more time later. After the call ended, Alex sat alone in silence. No scrolling, no distraction, just the uncomfortable awareness of how fragile later actually is. For the first time, the idea of Ichigo Ichie stopped being philosophical and started being personal. This moment will not repeat. This version of you will not return. He realized that his life was not paused. It was happening. And most of it was being missed, not because he didn't care, but because he kept waiting for the perfect moment to engage fully. That night, Alex didn't make promises. He didn't plan a transformation. He didn't say tomorrow will be different. He simply acknowledged something he had avoided for years. There is no second life waiting. There is only this one. And it is already moving. Chapter 4. The Cost of Delay. Over the following days, Alex paid attention, not to what he wanted to do, but to what he kept postponing. He noticed how often he delayed small actions that mattered: sending a message, starting a task, saying what needed to be said. Each delay felt insignificant on its own. Together, they formed a pattern of avoidance that shaped his entire life. He began to understand something uncomfortable. Procrastination wasn't laziness, it was self-protection. By delaying action, he delayed the possibility of failure, of discomfort, of discovering his limits. But he also delayed growth, meaning, and connection. Ichigo Ichie reframed everything. If this moment happens once, then postponing is not neutral. It is a decision to trade something irreplaceable for temporary comfort. Chapter 5. Standing inside the moment. Alex didn't change everything at once. He didn't overhaul his life. He started smaller. He chose to treat moments differently. When it was time to act, he acted, not perfectly, not confidently, but honestly. When fear appeared, he acknowledged it without letting it decide. When distraction called, he noticed it without obeying. Each moment became less about results and more about presence. Because presence is the only way to honor something that will never happen again. This is where the story truly begins. Because once you understand that you only get one moment, and missing it means it's gone forever, the question stops being, what should I do someday? And becomes, what am I doing now? Alex didn't wake up the next morning transformed. There was no surge of motivation, no sudden discipline, no cinematic resolve. The alarm rang, and for a brief moment, the old instinct returned, the desire to delay, to negotiate, to push the day slightly into the future. But something had shifted. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like starting?" he asked, "Is this moment happening only once?" That question didn't motivate him, it cornered him. He got out of bed, not with confidence, with awareness. This was the first uncomfortable truth Alex began to face. Presence doesn't feel heroic, it feels exposed. When you stop postponing, you remove the buffer that protects you from your own life. At work, he noticed how often his attention fractured, emails half-read, tasks started and abandoned. Conversations nodded through while his mind wandered somewhere safer. He wasn't overwhelmed by workload, he was overwhelmed by avoidance. The realization was unsettling. If nothing external was stopping him, then the resistance was internal. And internal resistance is harder to escape because it disguises itself as logic. I'll do this when I can focus properly. I'm not in the right headspace today. I don't want to rush something important. Each excuse sounded reasonable. Together, they formed a wall. That evening, Alex sat down with the intention of working on the project he had delayed for years, not finishing it, not perfecting it, just opening it. His body resisted immediately, a tightness in the chest, restlessness, the urge to check something else first. This was the moment he usually fled. Instead, he stayed. Not heroically, not bravely, awkwardly. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Nothing impressive happened, no flow state, no breakthrough, just friction, and yet, when he finally stood up, something felt different, not satisfaction, relief. He had stayed inside the moment instead of abandoning it. Chapter 6. The Real Cost of Later. Over the next week, Alex began noticing something he had never paid attention to before. How often later appeared in his thoughts. Later tonight. Later this week. Later when things calm down. Later wasn't just a word, it was a mindset, a belief that the present moment was a draft version of life, not the final copy. He started tracing the consequences of that belief. Later meant unanswered messages. Later meant unstarted projects. Later meant conversations postponed until urgency replaced sincerity. Later wasn't neutral. It was expensive. One evening, while sitting alone, Alex thought about people he hadn't called in months. Not because he didn't care, but because calling felt emotionally inconvenient. Each delay assumed there would be another opportunity. Ichigo Ichie dismantled that assumption. There is no guarantee of repetition. There is no stored version of now. That night, Alex made a call he had postponed for far too long. The conversation was ordinary, nothing dramatic. But when it ended, he felt something unfamiliar. Completion, not closure. Completion. Chapter 7. Why the Mind Resists Presence. As Alex continued paying attention, he noticed that the hardest part wasn't starting tasks. it was staying with them. The mind constantly tried to escape, to fragment attention, to seek relief through distraction. He began reading more deeply, not for motivation, but for understanding. What he learned was unsettling. The brain is wired to prefer immediate comfort over long-term meaning. This bias evolved for survival, not fulfillment. In the modern world, where comfort is always available, this wiring becomes a liability. Every time Alex chose distraction, his brain learned that escape was the correct response to discomfort. Over time, discomfort itself became something to fear. Presence threatened that pattern. Presence meant feeling boredom instead of avoiding it, feeling uncertainty instead of numbing it, feeling doubt without resolving it immediately. No wonder his mind resisted. Procrastination wasn't a character flaw. It was a trained reflex. And reflexes can be retrained, but only through repeated exposure. Chapter 8. Practicing the uncomfortable moment. Alex stopped setting large goals, not because goals were bad, but because they became another way to postpone engagement. Goals lived in the future. Ichigo Ichie lived now. Instead, he started practicing moments. One focused work session, one honest conversation, one workout done without negotiation. Not tomorrow, not later, now. Some days went well, others collapsed into old patterns. But instead of spiraling into guilt, Alex began treating failure differently. Failure wasn't proof of inadequacy, it was proof of participation. Each time he noticed himself drifting, he returned, not to discipline, but to awareness. This moment is happening once. That sentence became an anchor. Chapter 9. Relationships without delay. The most surprising changes appeared in his relationships. Alex began putting his phone down during conversations, not dramatically, simply deliberately. He noticed how rare full attention had become and how deeply people responded to it. Listening without waiting to speak felt uncomfortable at first. Silence exposed thoughts he used to hide behind distractions, but slowly, conversations deepened. People noticed, not because Alex announced his intentions, but because presence is unmistakable. He stopped postponing difficult conversations, not because they became easier, but because he understood that delay made them heavier. Some conversations didn't end well, others healed things he assumed were already broken. Either way, they were real. Chapter 10. Time without illusion. Weeks passed. Alex didn't feel like a new person. He felt like someone finally living the life he had been planning. The illusion of infinite time faded gradually, replaced by something quieter and more grounding. Urgency, not panic, but respect. Each morning became less about motivation and more about honesty. What am I avoiding? What matters today? What moment is asking for my attention? Not everything improved, but everything became clearer. And clarity, Alex learned, is the opposite of delay. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself, pause. Not to promise change, not to plan transformation, just to notice the moment you're in, because you only get one. And whether you step into it or postpone it is a decision happening right now. The third shift in Alex's life didn't announce itself as progress. It felt more like loss. As the habit of postponing weakened, something else disappeared with it, the comfort of fantasy. For years, Alex had lived partly inside imagined futures, better versions of himself who were more disciplined, more confident, more accomplished. Those imagined selves had been strangely soothing. They allowed him to feel hopeful without changing anything. Presence removed that refuge. When Alex stopped postponing, he also stopped escaping into who he might become someday. He was left with who he actually was, right now. And that was uncomfortable. Without the fantasy, reality felt sharper. His skills were less developed than he thought. His focus was weaker. His habits were fragile. None of this was new, But before, it had been hidden behind intention. Now, it was exposed. This was the moment many people quit. Not because they fail, but because they finally see themselves clearly. Alex nearly did. One evening, after a long day, he sat down to work on the project he had been slowly reviving. He opened the document and felt a familiar wave of resistance. Not laziness, not boredom. Grief. Grief for the time already lost, for the years he could not recover, for the version of himself he had assumed would eventually appear. He closed the laptop and sat still. This time, he didn't distract himself. He let the grief exist. It passed slowly, like weather, and something unexpected followed it. Resolve, not the dramatic kind, but a quieter, steadier willingness to continue anyway. Chapter 11. Why regret appears when you stop delaying. Alex began to understand that regret doesn't come from failure. It comes from awareness. As long as you postpone, regret stays dormant. The mind remains busy, planning, justifying, and hoping. But when you stop delaying and face the present honestly, regret surfaces because there is no longer a buffer. Ichigo Ichie makes this unavoidable. If each moment happens once, then missed moments don't fade. They close. Alex noticed this, especially in small things, texts he should have sent earlier, opportunities he ignored, even simple habits he never formed. At first, this awareness felt cruel. But then he realized something important. Regret is not punishment. It is information. It signals what matters. The pain wasn't telling him he was broken. It was telling him where attention was needed now. Chapter 12. Learning to act without certainty. One of the deepest patterns Alex uncovered was his dependence on certainty. He delayed action until he felt confident. He waited to feel ready. He waited for clarity. The problem was that clarity rarely arrives before action. It emerges from it. Alex began experimenting with acting while uncertain, writing without knowing where it would lead, working without knowing if the outcome would be successful, speaking without knowing how it would be received. Each time, fear appeared, and each time, fear lost a bit of its authority. He learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to let fear decide timing. Ichigo Ichie reframed this completely. If the moment is already disappearing, waiting for certainty is often the riskiest option. Chapter 13. The subtle discipline of showing up. Alex stopped chasing intensity. In the past, he believed progress required motivation, energy, and passion. When those were absent, he assumed the day was lost. Now he practiced something simpler, showing up, not heroically, not impressively, consistently. Some days he worked with focus. Other days he barely managed the minimum. But the act of showing up mattered more than the quality of performance. Presence, he realized, is not about doing everything well. It's about not abandoning the moment. Even boredom became part of the practice, especially boredom, because boredom was where postponement used to thrive. Chapter 14. Time feels different when you stop escaping. Weeks turned into months, and Alex noticed a strange shift in how time felt. Days no longer blurred together as much. Moments had edges. Even ordinary tasks felt more defined. This wasn't because life became more exciting. It became more inhabited. When you're present, time doesn't speed up or slow down. It becomes visible. Alex understood why people say life feels shorter as you age. It's not because there's less time. It's because fewer moments are fully experienced. Ichigo Ichie countered that. Each moment, fully entered, felt complete on its own. Chapter 15. The resistance returns in new forms. Just when Alex began to feel grounded, resistance adapted. It no longer appeared as distraction. It appeared as overthinking, endless refinement, endless preparation, endless evaluation. He caught himself delaying under the guise of doing it properly. This form of resistance was more convincing. It sounded responsible, it sounded intelligent, it sounded like maturity, but it led to the same outcome: inaction. Alex learned to ask a new question. Is this preparation moving me forward or protecting me from starting? The answer was rarely comfortable. Chapter 16. When presence changes identity. Something subtle but significant happened over time. Alex stopped thinking of himself as someone trying to change. He became someone who acts, not perfectly, not constantly, but reliably. Identity followed behavior, not intention. The stories he told himself shifted. He no longer said, "I should." He said, "I'm doing." That change affected everything. Confidence emerged, not as arrogance, but as trust in his ability to respond to moments as they arrived. Chapter 17. The Cost of Missing. This moment. One night, Alex attended a small gathering. Nothing special. Ordinary conversation. Ordinary people. At one point, he caught himself drifting mentally and pulled himself back. He listened fully. Later, someone thanked him for being present. That comment stayed with him. How many moments like this had he missed? Not dramatic ones, quiet ones. Ichigo Ichie isn't about urgency for achievement, it's about respect for existence. Chapter 18. Choosing the moment. Again and again. Alex realized that presence isn't something you achieve, it's something you choose repeatedly. Every day, postponement invites you back. Every day, distraction offers relief. Every day, the illusion of later returns. And every day, you decide whether to believe it. There is no final victory over delay. There is only today's moment, and then the next, and then the next. If you've made it this far, don't rush past this point. Notice where you are. Notice what you're avoiding. Notice what this moment is asking from you. Because this moment will not come again. And whether you step into it or let it pass will quietly shape the rest of your life. By the time Alex reached what felt like the middle of his transformation, he understood something most people never do. Progress does not feel like winning. It feels like standing still while everything inside you reorganizes. The old markers he used to measure improvement no longer worked. He wasn't chasing excitement. He wasn't fueled by motivation. There were no dramatic breakthroughs to point to. What had changed was quieter and harder to explain. He was no longer running from moments. That didn't mean the moments were easy. In fact, they were often harder. Chapter 19. When discomfort loses its power. Alex noticed that discomfort still appeared, but it no longer controlled timing. There were mornings when his body felt heavy, when his mind wanted escape, when every instinct suggested delay. Those mornings used to decide the day for him. Now they were simply part of it. Discomfort had become information, not instruction. He learned that most of what he had labeled as not ready was actually just resistance to being fully present. Presence exposes weakness. It reveals uncertainty. It removes the illusion that you're better than your current effort. Avoidance protects ego. Presence dissolves it. Alex stopped waiting to feel prepared. He started moving while feeling exposed. That shift changed everything. Chapter 20. The quiet strength of unremarkable days. Something else surprised him. Many of his best days looked completely ordinary. No inspiration, no visible success, no recognition, just consistent engagement with what was in front of him. These days would have felt meaningless to his former self. He would have dismissed them as unproductive because they didn't feel significant. Now he understood their value. Life isn't shaped by standout moments alone. It's shaped by the accumulation of moments you don't abandon. Ichigo. Ichie gave even unremarkable days weight because once they passed, they were gone forever, and honoring them meant showing up fully even when nothing exciting happened. Chapter 21. Relationships under the lens of presence. As Alex's internal relationship with time changed, so did his external relationships. People sensed the difference before he could articulate it. He no longer multitasked during conversations. He no longer rushed responses to move on to something else. He no longer treated interactions as obstacles between himself and his next task. This made some people uncomfortable. Presence can feel intense to those who aren't used to it. A few relationships faded, not because of conflict, but because they were built on shared distraction. When Alex stopped participating in surface-level engagement, the connection had nothing left to stand on. Other relationships deepened, conversations slowed, pauses lengthened. Silence became less awkward and more meaningful. Alex realized how many relationships in his life had been maintained by habit rather than attention. Attention changed everything. Chapter 22. When the past tries to pull you back. Just when Alex felt grounded, the past returned with a familiar voice. It didn't accuse him, it didn't shame him, it tempted him. You've already improved. You can relax now, you deserve a break. You don't need to be so intentional all the time. This was the most dangerous form of resistance, not avoidance, but complacency. Ichigo Ichie doesn't ask for obsession. It asks for respect, and respect fades easily when things start feeling manageable. Alex caught himself slipping on small things, leaving messages unanswered, zoning out during conversations, postponing tasks because one day won't matter, but one day always mattered, not because it was special, because it was irreplaceable. Chapter 23. Relearning how to begin. When Alex noticed himself drifting, he didn't panic. He returned to the simplest action possible, beginning, not finishing, not fixing everything, just beginning again, opening the document, standing up to train, making the call, sitting still instead of escaping. He learned that discipline is not sustained force, it's repeated return. The moment you notice you've left the moment, that's the moment to re-enter. No guilt required. Chapter 24. Time stops feeling like an enemy. For most of his life, Alex experienced time as pressure, deadlines, aging, missed opportunities. Time felt like something that was constantly running out. As his relationship with the present changed, so did his relationship with time. Time stopped feeling hostile, not because there was more of it, but because he stopped wasting it unconsciously. This didn't make life slower, it made it fuller. Even difficult days felt complete instead of hollow. Chapter 25. Presence is not control. One of the most important realizations Alex had was this. Presence does not mean control. Being present doesn't guarantee good outcomes. It doesn't prevent mistakes. It doesn't protect against loss. It simply ensures that whatever happens, you are there for it. That alone is powerful. Alex still failed. He still made poor choices sometimes. He still experienced disappointment. But he experienced them directly, not through avoidance. And that directness shortened recovery, reduced regret, deepened understanding. Chapter 26. What it means to respect a moment. Ichigo Ichie changed how Alex defined respect. Respect wasn't about politeness or seriousness, it was about engagement. To respect a moment meant not rushing through it, not treating it as a placeholder, not mentally relocating to the future. It meant giving the moment what it asked for, nothing more, nothing less. Some moment asked for effort, some asked for rest, some asked for honesty, some asked for silence. Avoidance was disrespect, presence was acknowledgement. Chapter 27. The cost of presence is the loss of excuses. As Alex grew more present, he lost something he didn't realize he depended on. Excuses. When you're present, you can no longer blame circumstances as easily. You can't claim ignorance. You can't hide behind intention. You see clearly what you're choosing. That clarity can be uncomfortable, but it's also liberating, because once you see clearly, you regain agency, and agency changes everything. Chapter 28. The moment before the moment. Alex began noticing a small gap that appeared before action, a fraction of a second where choice lived, before distraction, before delay, before escape. That gap used to pass unnoticed. Now it felt sacred. That was where Ichigo Ichie lived, not in dramatic decisions, but in tiny pivots of attention. In that gap, Alex could either leave the moment or stay, and each time he stayed, something inside him strengthened. Chapter 29. Living without the backup life. The idea that started everything returned to him one evening. The belief that there is a second life waiting somewhere in the future. Alex saw it clearly now for what it was. A myth. There is no backup version of your life, no later chapter where everything finally begins. There is only this unfolding series of moments, and each one asks the same quiet question. Are you here or somewhere else? Chapter 30. Standing where life actually happens. Alex didn't feel complete. He didn't feel finished. He felt engaged, and that was enough. He understood that Ichigo Ichie wasn't a philosophy to admire. It was a practice to return to, again and again. Because the moment you're in now, reading this, breathing, thinking, will never appear again in exactly this way, and what you do with it will quietly echo forward. Not dramatically, not loudly, but permanently. There was no moment when Alex could say, "This is it, I've arrived." That idea no longer made sense to him. Arrival implied a destination outside the present, and the present was the only place that had ever been real. What changed instead was his relationship with endings. He stopped seeing moments as things to get through and started seeing them as things to finish properly. Finish didn't mean complete perfectly. It meant be there until the moment naturally ended. Chapter 31. The day you stop waiting to feel ready. Alex noticed that readiness never appeared before action. It appeared after. Confidence didn't come first. Energy didn't come first. Clarity didn't come first. Action came first. This reversed almost everything he had believed about motivation. For years, he had waited to feel ready before starting. Now he understood that readiness is a byproduct of engagement, not a prerequisite. Some days he acted while tired. Some days while uncertain, some days while afraid, and each time the fear softened after the action, not before it. The moment you step into the moment, it meets you halfway. Chapter 32. When presence becomes identity. At some point, Alex stopped describing himself as someone working on being more present. He simply was, not constantly, not flawlessly, but often enough that it shaped how he moved through the world. Presence became less of a decision and more of a default. He didn't check his phone reflexively anymore. He didn't mentally rehearse future conversations while in current ones. He didn't rush through tasks just to get to the next thing. Life felt less frantic, not because there was less to do, but because he wasn't leaving it all the time. Chapter 33. The illusion of missing out disappears. One unexpected shift was how the fear of missing out faded. When Alex lived in the future, everything else felt like a distraction from what should be happening. He constantly worried that he was in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing, wasting time. Presence dissolved that anxiety. When you're fully in the moment, there is nowhere else you're supposed to be. Even rest felt legitimate instead of guilty. Even work felt grounded instead of urgent. The feeling of life slipping away softened, not because time slowed down, but because he stopped abandoning it. Chapter 34. Loss without escape. Not every moment was gentle. Alex still experienced loss, disappointment, sadness. The difference was that he didn't escape from them anymore. He stayed. Grief didn't stretch endlessly when it was faced directly. It moved, changed shape, made room for something else, avoided pain, lingers, felt pain passes. This applied not just to emotions, but to mistakes. When Alex failed now, he didn't spiral into self-judgment. He examined the moment. He learned. He returned. Failure became feedback instead of identity. Chapter 35. Why people sense it without you. Explaining people often asked Alex what had changed. He struggled to answer because nothing obvious had. He hadn't become louder. He hadn't become more ambitious. He hadn't become more impressive. He had become available. Available to conversations. Available to responsibility. Available to discomfort. Presence has weight. People feel it instinctively. You don't have to explain it. When someone is truly there, the moment deepens for everyone involved. Chapter 36. The last lie that falls apart. There was one lie that lingered longer than the rest. I'll do this when things settle down. Alex recognized it instantly now. Things never settle down. Life doesn't pause to give you ideal conditions. It moves, shifts, disrupts, surprises. Waiting for calm is another form of delay. The truth was simpler and harder. You act within the chaos, or not at all. Ichigo Ichie didn't ask him to control life. It asked him to meet it. Chapter 37. The moment you're in right now. One evening, Alex caught himself doing something he would have done years earlier. Scrolling, drifting, letting time pass unnoticed. The difference was that he noticed it quickly. He didn't scold himself. He didn't panic. He simply stopped, put the phone down, sat still, breathed, and returned. That return mattered more than the slip, because presence isn't about never leaving. It's about coming back sooner. Chapter 38. You only get one. Alex finally understood what Ichigo Ichie was really pointing to. Not urgency, not productivity, not pressure. Respect. Respect for the moment you're in. Respect for the people in front of you. Respect for the life that is already happening. You don't get a rehearsal. You don't get a duplicate. You don't get to save this moment for later. You either inhabit it or you don't. Chapter 39. What Alex would tell you. If Alex could speak directly to you now, he wouldn't tell you to overhaul your life. He wouldn't tell you to quit your job, start a new project, or become a different person overnight. He would ask you something much simpler. What are you postponing today? Not someday, not this year. Today. Because today is not a draft. It is not a warm-up. It is not a placeholder. It is the thing itself. Chapter 40. The quiet. Ending. Alex's life didn't become perfect, it became real, and that was enough. He still planned for the future, he still worked toward goals, but he no longer lived for the future. He lived here, now, again and again. Because missing this moment doesn't create a gap you can fill later. It creates an absence that remains, and once you truly understand that, the question is no longer, when will I start? It becomes, am I here, right now, because you only get one moment, and it's already happening. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.